I was 32 the night my father slid a white envelope across the dinner table to my brother. $60,000. Cash toward a down payment. When I asked about my own future, my mother folded her napkin and said, "You can rent somewhere, honey. You've always been fine." She said it the way you'd tell a waitress the food was fine. Kyle got a house that night. I got a compliment sharp enough to shave with. 18 months later, my family found out what I'd built without them. And 2 years after that envelope, at that same table, on that same tablecloth, they asked me for something that still takes my breath away. My name is Jordan Holloway. I'm a pediatric ICU nurse in Dayton, Ohio, and in my family, money always moved one direction, downhill, toward Kyle. He was 4 years older and came with a rescue package built in. Totaled car at 19, replaced. College loans he walked away from, paid off. Credit card debt at 28, erased with my mother's wedding CD. Nobody explained the rule, I just learned it the way you learn a stove is hot. I never drowned, so I never got saved. I worked my way through nursing school, took the night shift for the pay differential, and by the night of that dinner I had $48,000 sitting quietly in a savings account nobody knew existed. In my family, having money you didn't need was like leaving a porch light on in daylight. Pointless. They were about to learn otherwise. That Sunday, Kyle talked for 20 minutes about a house on Sycamore Trail. Granite countertops. He said it 3 times like a spell. Then my father reached into his jacket and slid the envelope across the good tablecloth. $60,000 from the retirement account. My mother had her hands folded like she was in church. I asked, quietly, if there was ever help coming for me. My mother patted my hand and delivered the sentence that built everything after. "You can rent somewhere, honey. You've always been fine." Kyle laughed. Not cruelly, just easily, the way you laugh when the world agrees with you. Someone changed the subject to countertops. I finished my pot roast and said nothing. Under that tablecloth, something in me quietly closed a door and locked it. I drove home to my apartment above a laundromat and sat down with a legal pad. A decade in hospitals teaches you a sequence. Chart it, fix it, move on. I wrote my number, 48,212, and underneath it, my decision. I was done asking that table for anything. The next morning I called my credit union. The loan officer, Denise, ran my numbers and came back 30,000 short of what I'd hoped. A nurse's salary is a nurse's salary, so I found the people who could teach me to make it enough. A real estate investors group that met in a church basement off Wayne Avenue, folding chairs and burnt coffee. In the corner sat Earl Novak, 71, 40 years a landlord, treated like a bishop when he bothered to speak. I told him I wanted to house hack a duplex. He looked at me like a parking meter. Everybody wants to be a landlord until a toilet calls them at 2 a.m. Then he walked off. I came back every month after that. It took him 3 meetings to remember my name. Before I found my first property, I survived Kyle's housewarming. 60 people, balloons on the mailbox, my mother giving tours like a docent. My aunt asked gently when I'd stop renting and settle down. My mother toasted to family, taking care of family. I spent the party clearing plates, the way I always somehow ended up doing. That night I found a listing, a 1924 brick duplex on Wren Street, 1 unit occupied, 1 vacant, $148,500. I looked at the photos until 2 a.m. My mother's toast rang in my head. I decided to become my own family. The math worked. An FHA loan needed only 3.5% down, about $5,200. The occupied unit rented for $850 a month, nearly covering the mortgage. I called my father, not my mother, and asked him to walk the property with me, the way an electrician reads a breaker panel. He said yes, and sounded glad to be asked. For 4 days I let myself imagine it. Then Saturday came, and a text. Kyle's water heater had burst. Rain check, kiddo. His emergency, my rain check. Always in that order. I went to the inspection alone. The inspector found old knob and tube wiring, which I used as leverage to knock $6,500 off the price. My father never mentioned the house again. I stopped waiting for the follow-up question. I closed alone in a title office next to a vape shop. The title officer asked if we were waiting on a husband or a parent. "It's just me," I said. She told me, "Good for me," in the voice people use for dogs who can shake. I sat on the bare floor of my new living room eating a gas station sandwich, and I told the empty walls, "It's ours." My family had no idea it existed. Earl Novak's prophecy came true 19 days later. A toilet emergency at 3 a.m., which I fixed myself with a wrench and a repair video. That whole first summer I patched plaster after night shifts, mowed my own lawn, learned that paint is a love language. My personal housing costs dropped to $290 a month. Every spare dollar went back into savings. I kept going to Sunday dinners and kept my mouth shut, until September, when I tested the water. I mentioned, casually, that I'd been studying rental property. My mother laughed. Not cruelly, just the way you laugh at a child who says she'll be an astronaut. "On a nurse's salary, honey. The taxes alone." She turned to my father and made him tell the story about a rental with raccoons. I never asked again. That October, I showed Earl my actual numbers, spreadsheets, rent rolls, repair logs. He crossed out my repair reserve and doubled it. "The furnace is from '09. You're budgeting like it's immortal." Then he really looked at me for the first time. From then on, I had a standing seat next to him. Once, and only once, he told me something personal. He'd given his son everything. First truck, first house, 2 restaurant bailouts. His son was 51 now and didn't return his calls. "Help that never asks you to grow isn't help," Earl said. I learned that $200,000 too late. I carried that sentence like a spare key. Property number 2 was a wrecked bungalow on Marigold Street. $85,000, bought with a conventional loan and rehabbed mostly by my own hands, including a run-in with Kyle in the Home Depot seasonal aisle, where he was loading a $600 pizza oven onto a cart, funded by a card that read, "Our mother's name," talking about passive income and a flip he was starting with a friend named Deke. He never once asked what I was doing there in my demolition clothes. In the Marigold cellar, I found an old oak key rack with 4 brass hooks and someone's wood-burned roses. I sanded it, oiled it, hung it by my back door. Wren Street's key went on the first hook. That night I made myself a promise out loud, the only witness I trusted. 1 year for the other 2 hooks. Fine would mean 4. The next year cost everything a body has to give. 3 or 4 12-hour night shifts a week, every daylight hour on rehab, a missed wedding, a friendship with a hairline crack in it that I put there myself. My coworker Tanya was the only one who saw any of it. Sitting on paint buckets one frozen Sunday, she asked the question I'd been outrunning since March. "Jordy, who exactly are you proving this to?" At Thanksgiving, Kyle announced he was funding his half of a flip house with a $38,000 home equity line against his own home. My parents glowed. My father raised his coffee to real estate men. I said nothing, holding 2 properties and a set of books Earl had personally corrected. Leaving that night, my father pressed a folded 50 into my hand. "Gas money, don't tell your mother." I still have that bill. In spring, I refinanced Marigold, pulling out $25,000 to put toward Property 3, a bungalow on Cedar Avenue, near a hospital shuttle stop, rented before the paint cured. 3rd key, 3rd hook, 1 left. Then Earl called, a thing he never did, and drove me to a brick duplex on Hawthorne Avenue, his very first building. Both units rented to tenants who paid like clockwork. He was retiring to Arizona to be near a grandchild he'd met 4 times. He offered to carry the note himself. $138,000, 10% down, no bank. His only condition was that I bring him every book I kept. He read for 2 hours over a glass of buttermilk, stopped longest on the legal pad from the night of the envelope, and said only, "Tuesday, my attorney's office. Bring the 138. I closed that December, 18 months after Wren Street. The 4th key went on the 4th hook. I sat on my kitchen floor and cried for 30 seconds, hard and out of nowhere, and then I made tea. In February, a local business reporter, Renee Vasquez, asked to profile me. I nearly said no. Newsprint gets clipped and taped to refrigerators in Kettering, and once it ran, there'd be no more choosing who learned what and when. But Tanya's question hadn't left me. I'd spent 18 months quietly building a case file, evidence for a courtroom where my family would finally rule I'd been worth backing. That courtroom was never going to convene on its own. I called Renee back and said yes. The article ran on a Thursday, above the fold. A nurse who built a 4-property portfolio in 18 months, photographed on my own porch. My phone became a slot machine of texts. My aunt forwarded the page to the family group chat. Kyle sent a thumbs up without reading past the headline. My father wrote that the brick on my porch was his own father's work. From my mother, 3 full days of silence. On the 4th day, she summoned me to the house. My parents and Kyle stood in the kitchen like an unfinished tribunal. The article folded on the counter. 2 years, my mother said before I'd taken my coat off. Sneaking around, letting your own mother find out from Sharon. You lied to this family. Not built. Lied. My father read the article twice in silence, moving his lips at the numbers. Kyle, arms crossed, smirked. So what? You finally got yourself a house? Congratulations. I looked at my brother and asked, evenly, which one? The kitchen went silent enough to hear the refrigerator. The fallout came fast and predictable. Relatives with sudden emergencies, and my mother telling the aunts, proudly and wounded at once, we never had to worry about Jordan. That girl always lands on her feet. Even my secret got rebranded as their peace of mind. But that Thursday, my father's truck pulled up at Wren Street. He stood at the bottom of the steps, cap in his hands, looked at the brickwork, and said, "Your grandfather laid brick on half this street. Rewired most of it, too." He touched the porch post, like checking a pulse. "You've got his hands." Then he left before I trusted my voice. Kyle came alone on a Sunday, turning his cap in his hands at my table, and told me everything. The logistics job lost in November, the consulting a fiction, the flip dead weight, Deke gone silent, 2.5 payments behind on his own house. "I keep waiting to feel like a guy who owns a house," he said. "It's never once felt like mine." I didn't tell him the head start had been the anchor. He'd said the word himself, drowning. My mother beat the real ambush by 3 days, showing up with a coffee cake and, for the first time in 34 years, a story of her own. Her father's 200-acre farm near Pequea, left entirely to her brother because he'd failed at everything else, while she was told, at 24, "You've got Dennis, you'll be fine." She said it standing in front of my key rack without seeming to hear the echo. Then she straightened her purse and delivered the real reason for the visit, casual as a coaster. "Sunday then, Kyle is drowning. Bring your checkbook." Sunday, same table, same tablecloth. My father slid a manila folder across it, a refinance package folding Kyle's equity line into a manageable payment, needing a cosigner with my income and credit. My mother placed a pen beside it like a communion wafer. "It's a signature, Jordan. It costs you nothing." Then the sentence she'd been saving 34 years to say, believing it was love. "You wanted to be part of this family. This is your moment." I asked the numbers out loud, evenly, like taking vitals. The payoff, the arrears, the real income behind the pending warehouse job. On paper, I could survive signing. I could afford, for the first time in my life, to buy their love. I picked up the pen, and then I set it back down on the far side of the folder. "No," I said, "I'm not signing, and I'm not writing a check." I turned to Kyle, only Kyle, and offered him the other thing. Sunday mornings at my table with his real numbers, help selling Sycamore Trail at a price that would actually move it, hardship terms on the equity line, and, when Marigold turned over in June, a chance to apply like anyone else, first month and deposit, my standard lease. "You'd be my tenant, not my charity," I told him. "You'd learn what everything costs, which is the one thing nobody in this family ever let you find out." My mother stood so fast her chair barked against the floor. "He's your brother, not an applicant," she said, voice cracking at the edges. "The first time this family asks you for one thing, you offer him paperwork, You've got 4 houses, Jordan. 4. I stood too, picked up the fallen sheet, set it back on the table. You're right, I said. I do have 4 houses. And you never once had to worry about me. I know that's your compliment. So here mine, I'm fine. I made sure of it myself, because somebody at this table had to be. I put on my coat. At the door, my father followed me out, hatless in the cold. "Send Kyle the Sunday time," was all he said. From that particular man, it was very nearly everything. I ate my last pot roast at that table that night. Standing alone in my kitchen afterward, coat still on, I looked at 4 brass hooks throwing 4 small shadows up the wall, and understood, finally, that they'd never been a courtroom exhibit. They were just keys to buildings where the rent's cleared and a records clerk's daughter had a bedroom with good light. The verdict in Kettering had been written before I was born, in a farmhouse kitchen near Pequea. You can't win that case, you can only stop filing it. Just before midnight, Kyle texted, "No apology, no preamble." "What time? Sunday?" I laughed until I had to hold the counter, texted back 9, "Bring your bank statements," and hung my car key on the first hook, where it fit fine beside everything else I owned. Sycamore Trail sold that June for $282,000, price to actually move. After the mortgage, the equity line, and closing costs, Kyle walked away with a little over $6,000 and, for the first time in his adult life, 0 debt. The Trotwood flip closed for less than he and Deke owed. His share came to nothing. The warehouse job came through. Second shift, forklift certified, benefits. That July he filled out my rental application like anyone else, and I made him wait 2 days for the answer. He moved into Marigold with a standard lease and a deposit he paid himself. 4 months in, 4 rent checks, every one of them early. Sunday mornings he still shows up with his binder, and some weeks my father's truck is already at the curb, quietly supervising my gutters and outlets without any announcement at all. My mother hasn't set foot on Wren Street since the coffee cake. We're polite at other people's events, like former co-workers. In August, a birthday card came in her round church bulletin hand. Just Mom, no note. The ledger's still open on her side. I've stopped expecting her to close it, because I understand now whose hands first placed it there, and what it cost her to believe it was love. Earl sends postcards from Arizona, no greeting, just sentences. The last one read, "Grandkid can swim now. Books still clean. They are, Earl. All 6 doors, boring as a heartbeat. The highest compliment in the business." Last Sunday, my brother's truck pulled up early, a bag of donuts under his arm, and he grinned up at me from the walk. "Hey, you home?" I looked at 4 keys, catching the morning light, plus a car key that has no idea how it earned the neighborhood, and I said it, because some questions are worth keeping. Which one? Being fine was never the consolation prize they handed me. It was the inheritance I wrote myself, 1 key at a time, and nobody gets to slide it across a table, and nobody gets to take it back.